this week, I'm going to switch things up a little bit. I'm not doing a book review, but instead I'm doing a little Q&A where authors submitted questions to me, and I have a little list. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing today. So the first question, and I did briefly read through each question, but I don't really have a pre-planned answer. I'm going to kind of just go with the flow. So my first question is from Elise. How did you get into cover photography? So I've always loved photography ever since high school. I always had a camera with me, and I was always taking pictures of things like with my friends and when we would hang out. I was just always trying to like capture different moments. And then right after college, I decided I wanted to take things further, and I enrolled in an online program through the New York Institute of Photography, and it was all on your own. They would send you different tasks and you would take tests online. They would send you different assignments, and this was so long ago where you actually mailed in your photos on a CD and they critiqued them and then gave you feedback. It sounds so crazy to me now, like you mailed in a CD with your photos. And it was, I think I completed it in less than 2 years. I forget how many years you had to complete it, and you were doing everything on your own. Like, it wasn't things were due by a certain time. You had an allotted amount of years to complete the program, and you were doing it when you had time. So for each task, you were mailed a packet, and you had to read and learn all the different elements, and then you submitted. So there was that. And then with that, I kind of learned like different things I liked and didn't like. I had tried all different kinds of things like nature and like events, baby showers and bridal showers, maternity photos, family photos. I didn't really become super passionate in a specific sector until I started working on model portfolios, working on helping them with their books and doing magazine type of editorials. Fast forward to 2013, I booked my first book cover with an author named Sophie Monroe, and it was for her rocker romance. I had always been passionate about reading ever since I was little. I loved in elementary school scholastic books where they had book fairs in school. I loved R.L. Stine and mysteries, suspense. Definitely back then was R.L. Stine, I remember very specifically, was my favorite. But I never knew that that was an avenue in photography that you could actually do. So when that opportunity first came about, I was like, wow, how hadn't I thought of this? Especially since I do love reading so much. And then it kind of just went from there. And I've been grateful and thankful ever since. Next question is from Shelley Justice. She had a few. She was asking me how I got started as well, which I kind of already answered with Elise. What was your first cover, the book and the model? So his name is Joe, and that was for Sophie Monroe's book called Afflicted, and that came out in 2013. It's a back shot of him leaning against the wall like this. And his whole back is tatted up, and it's actually on my wall, so I can see it right there. It's black and white, and he's against a brick wall. what would you be doing if you weren't a photographer? So I went to school for communication studies, and with that I was doing, so when I graduated with my degree, my background is in email marketing and social media marketing. So I did email marketing for a vast variety of different companies throughout my corporate career, from a pharmaceutical recruiting firm. I worked at a sports apparel company. I worked at a women's wig company that also had fashion. And then my most recent, which I left there in 2018 and switched to doing photography full-time, was a office supplies company. So I was doing email marketing and then social media marketing for a wide array of different companies, which was really fun to work in different industries. So if I weren't a photographer, I would definitely still be doing social media marketing to some extent. I love being able to use your creativity, and I still do social media all the time for myself now. So what's interesting is like a lot of the tools that I learned through my corporate jobs doing email and social media marketing, I now just use for myself. So it was great to obtain those tools and then use it for myself. What is one destination you'd like as a backdrop for your photos? I love shooting outdoors with natural light. That's primarily what I use as my medium. I would love a location with a waterfall. I'm real clumsy, so it would be interesting how I would make that work, but I would love something with, somewhere with a waterfall, I think would be really pretty. And then her last question was, what are your favorite types of photos to take? Themes, props, etc. I love, like I said, I primarily use natural light shooting outdoors, which can have its own set of interesting potential issues because you're outdoors, so the weather, especially Florida in the summer, where I live, it's pretty difficult with how humid it is. So I don't shoot as much in the summer as I would shoot in other seasons, just purely for the weather. But I love outdoor settings, the kind of like grungy, gritty areas, different alleys. I love brick. I love different textured types of walls. Something where an author and their designer can really utilize that background and make it their own, whether or not they want to transform it into something else, or if they really just love the backgrounds that I used in general and how to incorporate that into their story. The next question comes from Tanya, and who has influenced you the most? That's a tough question. Oh, that is a tough one. I am influenced a lot by my surroundings. So when I'm working with a model, I'm inspired by the location and how to create that into a story, which is why I love shooting outside so much. Growing up, one of my favorite shows was America's Next Top Model, so I really looked up to photographers on that show, like Nigel Barker. I thought he was so talented, and growing up, when I would watch that with my sister, when I was learning photography, we would try different themed shoots that they did on the show. Like there was one where the premise was taking different drapes and hanging them into the sun and then using those shapes to reflect onto the model. So we tried that. That would be kind of fun to like recreate that idea and make that into its own YouTube video of recreating different shoots on the show. Obviously, the easier ones that are more so anyone could do rather than the very complex themes. And the next question comes from Tamara. So a how to pose photos tutorial aimed at awkward authors. Okay, so in general, the most important thing is to feel comfortable and relaxed. If you're feeling stiff and awkward and uncomfortable, it'll show immediately in the pictures. So I would just say in general, I always just like to talk to the person, model, author, whomever it may be, and just make them feel comfortable and at ease. And that's kind of the main thing I like to do. The pose itself isn't so much as important as just making sure they feel comfortable. So talking for 5 minutes or so, getting to know the person, trying laughing with them and just being like light and airy and fun usually helps the most. And my last question comes from Tara. How do you make a model relax during a hot pose, or do you have to offer suggestions? Kind of like what I just mentioned with Tamara, it's just you have to make someone, there needs to be a mutual feeling of safety and that you respect each other's space and company, and you just make each other feel relaxed. When I'm working with someone I've never worked with before, I usually have been speaking to them for 1 to 2 weeks, sometimes months before we even shoot. So then by the time we are shooting, we kind of know each other decently well and you feel more relaxed and at ease with someone. So that I think is the most important. If it is very off the cuff and you're shooting like right after you start talking, it can be a little awkward and it takes a minute to kind of get into a groove and find an even footing. So just making sure everyone feels comfortable and that everything is kind of planned in regards to the ideas for the shoot, the outfits, the different themes, just so everything's very clear. That was all the questions. If this is something you would like me to do again in the future, let me know. Happy to do more Q&As in the future, but I hope everyone has a safe and healthy weekend, and don't forget to subscribe because I'll have more Friday reads coming soon. Have a great weekend, everyone.